Hello and welcome. If you're new to the channel, this is going to be my active YouTube channel for Flexible Fitness and Conditioning, my company. So, unlike the other YouTube videos on this channel, this one's going to be a little different, and hopefully my next videos to come will subvert my normal YouTube videos as well. So usually my videos consist of explanation videos on how to do certain exercises, or cue-ups, or just demonstrations on how to do certain movements, and it helps with online programming, so I can just send the video and show you how to do certain movements and not have to FaceTime you the whole time. So if you look back in the past videos, that's what a lot of them are, but for today and moving forward, I'm hoping to get a little bit more well-rounded and use YouTube to its full extent. This little next couple series is going to be educational. I graduated with my master's in exercise wellness and have spent years in the personal training field and then sport performance. And so I'm just gonna pull from my bag of knowledge that has been passed to me through either good lectures or practical application knowledge, anything like that I found really interesting and that hopefully you guys will find applicable to either your training or your clients or something along those lines. So to get into it, for the first one I want to talk about was a lecture I gave on the 2-point method. This is a method for determining 1 rep max, whether it be for squat or bench or any major compound movement. Some of the studies are even isolation exercises. But yeah, so I want to talk about the 2-point method. I find this interesting, one, because it has the ability to revolutionize how we test 1 rep max, which is always cool to have something that you can apply to your programming that could really change things up and how you test, how much you test, stuff like that. But also it's a little less talked about in the field. There hasn't been that many publications about it. I didn't hear about it working out in the field, even in some of the top performance D1 programs. Don't use anything like this. I'll explain why in coming later in the video, but yeah. So I just think it's interesting. It incorporates the force velocity curve, and you can see the direct utilization of the science, which is always fun. So my educational videos, some are going to be more steeped in the sport performance world, and it might be a little bit more esoteric, a little bit harder to apply for the general population, and then others hopefully will be bro science and things you can enact that week into your programming, into your gym training. So yeah, I just want to share the resources that I was given or the time I spent researching something personally. And yeah, this first one is the 2-point method. Before we get into the 2-point method, you have to understand what the job of a strength coach is first, okay? So we're going to take 10 steps back and work our way forward. Their goal is to make them stronger, better, faster, more resilient to injury, better conditioning. So strength and conditioning, everything you would imagine, right? And one of the ways strength coaches do this is by implementing or utilizing periodization, which surface level sounds a little abstract, or when I first was hearing about periodization, I had to do a little tug of war of understanding of what it was. It seems so broad, but yet so specific. But then I think it was Andy Galpin broke down in such simple terms to me once, and he goes, periodization, I think it was him, regardless, I'll give him credit, is planned manipulation of specific variables. So it's not just manipulating variables at random, arbitrarily. It's the planned, predetermined change in undulations in certain variables. Now, the first step in understanding periodization in that definition is what variables. So I'm going to get into that first. So the variables could be anything, and almost infinite amount. Like every time I watch a new novel training program, they manipulate a new variable. So it could be sets, reps, rest, tempo, full intent, exercise choice. What movement are you choosing to train? Exercise order. So many things. Just any type of new stimulus or thing you can change to get a different adaptation, even if it's off balance stuff or asymmetric or unilateral as opposed to bilateral training. Any variable in the weight room that a strength coach could manipulate over time, purposefully planned, that is periodization. So when they are decreasing your reps and increasing your intensity throughout the training sessions, that's not random. That they're specifically doing that on that day, on that week. That's periodization. So to understand the 2-point method, we have to delve into one of those factors, which I just touched on, intensity. Okay? So intensity is the weight you put on the bar, indirectly or directly. So you could say velocity training, so that's bar speed, how fast you move the bar, is a way to program intensity. And that's not what kind of weight you put on the bar, but indirectly it is, okay? Because if I say, hey, that bar was moving too slow, right? You need to lighten the load on the bar so you can move it faster. Even velocity-based training is to determine what my athletes, what my clients, what me personally, what type of weight I'm putting on the bar. So for ease of understanding, when I say we're going to manipulate intensity over time, we're going to undulate that to hit peaks at certain parts of the season. How we're going to do that is with changing the weight on the bar. So that's intensity. That's the factor or variable intensity for you. So now you can kind of understand how this plays into the 2-point method, because one of the most popular ways of programming intensity is by using % 1 rep max, right? So I already told you that the 2-point method is a way of gauging 1 rep max. It's a method for determining or almost estimating what a specific or individual athlete's 1 rep max might be. So I first need to determine, okay, well, one, intensity is an important variable to manipulate. Of course it is. Every coach does it. If you're not in some way, directly or indirectly, manipulating intensity over time, you're not doing your job, or you know something I don't know, which in science is very easy to not be the smartest person in the room on said topic. But for my knowledge, you got to manipulate intensity, and there's a few different ways of doing it, popular ways. One I already talked about, velocity. One I also talked about was % 1 rep max. And then you could do RPE, rate of perceived exertion, or RIR, reps in reserve. I'm not going to dive into those too much, and I'm not going to make the argument which one's better or which one's more important. All I'm going to say is that one that is very important, that because a lot of coaches use it, is % 1 rep max. So they have a testing week, they determine what your 1 rep max is, and then they program based off that. At week 4, I want you 65% for 8 reps, right? 65% gives you a specific weight that you want your athlete to lift that week. Now, in a optimal situation, using % 1 rep max like that is great, but there's a lot of pitfalls which make people move over to those velocity or those more subjective RIR, RPE, because it's because there's not that individualism. There's going to be changeover weeks. What's that called? Auto-regulatory. You regulating your own weight. or your own intensity that day based on CNS, stress, fatigue, sleep. That's all pretty redundant, but all those things that accumulate to affect what type of person you are that day will determine what your 1 rep max is. So I'm getting a little sidetracked, but in essence, we use 1 rep max to gauge what their top ability is for squat. So let's say you can squat 100 pounds and I am programming for someone telling them they need to lift 65% of that. They're lifting 65 pounds. That's the benefit of this. It gives an exact weight, right? The problem with it is not so much that me telling you what to lift, but the testing itself, in and of itself. Testing 1 rep max is, 1, inherently fatiguing, and then 2, deemed more risky than not testing 1 rep max, which is a fair statement. I'm not saying you can't do it safely. I'm saying it is, there's a reason you want more coaches out on the gym floor during testing, or it's just they're putting 100, there's a chance of failure, and they're putting a lot of weight on their back or over their head or whatnot. So it's deemed more risky, and it's inherently fatiguing. You can't, even if you're testing 1 rep max as a 3 rep max and then calculating their 1 rep or a 5 rep, they still have to go to fatigue at some point. They're still putting pretty heavy weight. Even a 5 is going to be a high percentage of their 1 rep max. So yeah, it's just those reasons, inherently fatiguing and deemed more risky, cause 1 rep max to be allocated to testing weeks of the year. And that could be 1 or 2 or 3 testing weeks sessions. And so what happens there? We still haven't really gotten to the problem of programming with 1% 1 rep max, but here is the issue. It's not very accurate, because if you're only testing, you only have testing weeks, it will really throw off your program. You can't test 1 RM every 3 weeks, right? Every new block, whatever it is. You can't do that, because that will change. If you're doing that, 1, it wastes a week almost, and 2, it completely ruins your programming if they're going at 100% 1 week, right? Especially in season. So what happens is their actual 1 rep max, what they could actually do, undulates week to week. Exam week it goes down, whatever. But you only tested here, so what your projected 1 RM is straight across, right? I think they can, and I programmed 315 on back squat all the way across. But really what happened was it was going up and down. So it's just, the day-to-day accuracy isn't that great. So now step in those auto-regulatory ways, means of determining intensity, and people like that. But regardless, coaches are still going to use % 1 rep max, because you can't cheat. You get an exact number. You can always make it subjective, and you can look at them and hear them and just watch the bar speed and go, you know what, today's not your day, back them off. So you can auto-regulatory, you can regulate their weight even when you're using 1 rep max. Regardless, it's popular, people are going to use it, so we need a better method for testing 1 rep max that isn't inherently fatiguing and is slightly less risky. Enter the 2-point method, okay? That was a huge intro to it, so I'm sorry you possibly could have skipped to this point, to be honest, if you understand all that. But yeah, so the 2-point method determines 1 RM by tracking bar speed, okay? So in the force velocity curve, think force on this side and velocity on this side on the axis of this graph. And so with more force comes less velocity. With more velocity comes less force, right? So there's this inverse relationship. The higher velocity, the faster you can move a bar, meters per second, the slower or the less weight you can do, and vice versa. The more weight you do, the slower you're going to move it, right? So that's a linear relationship in a lot of these lifting movements. And I'm not talking about muscle contractions and testing a fiber for force velocity. where you're going to get a curve to it. But in general, you could test 2 points. This is the whole philosophy or theory behind why the 2-point method works. I test a low weight, high velocity. I test a low weight, so 50% of your 1 rep max. Let's give an example. Let's say we're gonna guess you can squat. We don't know. We're trying to predict your 1 rep max. I think you could do around 50 pounds. I think you could do 100% or 100 pounds once, right, on bench. So I'm going to give you 50% of that. So 50 pounds, and I want you to bench it as fast as you can. If you have a linear distance tracker, like a Tendo or something, or even an app that uses actually the 2-point method, like Powerlift app, anything that can track bar speed, right, accurately, it has to be accurate, you will see that, at 50% they moved it pretty quick, 2 meters per second, right? Then you go, okay, now what would be around your 80%? I'm going to guess 80 pounds, right? You don't know, you're still trying to test, so just move them up in weight significantly. So you give them 80 pounds on bench, and you go bench it once as fast as you can. So not fatiguing, it's not as many times as you can, just one time as fast as you can, and you get, it's almost half a meter per second, right? So there's that line. You project that line out to what you deem as failure, so 2 meters or 0.2 meters per second or whatever it is, really slow, that you might as well be considered failing on that bench. Any slower and it's isometric or even eccentric on the way down, you're going to get some negative. But anyways, so you take those 2 numbers and project out, and you get the final estimate of what their 1 rep max is. That's in essence what the 2-point method is. It's getting 2 points on that force velocity curve and projecting their 1 RM. Now, to understand that, or to want to use it in your training, you have to understand 2 things. Is it practically applicable? Is it, can you use it? Could coaches sit there and do the math for every one of their athlete? 1, and 2, is it the efficacy? Is it really valid and reliable? Okay, so the studies I read and the research is out there. 1, there needs to be more research done on it, used in practical settings, not just in the lab, not just on a dynamometer, but actually in the weight room. So I'm sorry to not give you a great answer on it, on how well it works, but it does. They have been able to show studies where it works, and it predicts 1 rep max very well and safely. But you have to follow a very strict procedure. You have to give them a full warm-up. You have to have an accurate and valid and reliable means of tracking bar speed. You have to do the equation correctly. You have to have them test twice. So it is not a shortcut to testing 1 rep max. It's not. It's still a full day. It still has to be done right. So the practical application is not that it's easier. It's not. But that it is safer and less fatiguing. Therefore, we'll be able to test it more often, and thereby having a more accurate understanding of what my athletes' change in 1 RM looks like. And so my programming becomes more accurate and better, and I will be able to elicit the adaptions that I was hoping for in my clients and athletes. So just lastly, overall, if you have the right tools to track bar speed, if you have the right procedure to test this, the time frame, all you need now is the equations, and you don't have to sit there and do it by hand and turn it into MX plus B or put the equations. I've done the coding on Excel to figure this out, and if you email me, I can send you a link. There's some apps that do it for you. I think I said the Powerlift app does it already, but if you want to just, I'll hopefully be able to show a picture of the graph, but you just type in of the table, you'll type in the weight, the lightweight, the heavyweight, the lightweight's velocity, the heavy weights velocity, and it will generate the predicted 1RM for you. So you follow the procedure outlined in studies, Google 2-point method for Google Scholar, determining 1RM, and then you can email me or message me for the equations, and it's a cool, novel way, fun way, a full intent way of determining 1RM that isn't going to knock your athletes out for a week, right? So that's it. That's video 1. It went way longer than I was hoping, but I hope you enjoyed. The next video I'm going to do is on squat mechanics. I'm going to do one on different splits, weekly splits. Yeah, a bunch of different cool videos, hopefully, on this little educational series, and then maybe even some business videos as well. If you liked it, give me a message, what you'd like to see, email me, or any questions about it. I'd love any feedback. Thank you.